The plot of Yakuza 0 is served up like a fresh bowl of udon noodles, simmering, full of twists and turns, and satisfying to the end. While I very much enjoyed the bone-cracking street fights, numerous oddball side characters, and the Lonely Planet Guide's worth of entertaining diversions along the way, it's really the taut tale of betrayal and the bitter arm wrestle for power at its center that kept me glued to the controller throughout. Yakuza 0 is set in 1988 and serves as an origin story for two of the series' most prominent characters, Kazuma Kiryu and Goro Majima. It's a tale of gangster turf war that adheres mostly to convention, but it's told well and told thoroughly. Much like the Metal Gear Solid series, Yakuza 0 isn't afraid of taking control away from us for extended periods in order to deliver a lengthy cutscene to advance the plot and develop the characters. But I never felt in any way detached from the events on screen thanks to the strong performances of the actors and the quality of the dialogue. Once again, Sega has managed to nail the look and feel of its Tokyo and Osaka-inspired settings. The neon-soaked streets tread a fine line between gorgeous and garish, and the Don Quixote discount stores are claustrophobic caverns of consumerism. It's not exactly Grand Theft Auto Vice City when it comes to reveling in 80s nostalgia, but there are enough nods to the era to reinforce the sense of time and place, not least of which the playable classics in the local arcades. These arcade games are just the tip of the time-sinking iceberg. As is now customary for the series, Yakuza 0 always provides alluring C, D, and E options when you're on your way from A to B. There's fishing, bowling, slot car racing, several kinds of gambling, pool, darts, karaoke, dancing, underground fight clubs, and plenty more. These optional activities are, for the most part, well realised, and they range from the addictively simple reflex-testing batting cage to the relatively deep real estate business run by Kiryu in Tokyo and Majima's hostess bar empire in Osaka. The latter two management simulations in particular require a substantial time investment, but yield maximum yen. And while I only scratched the surface of them on my way to completing the 30-hour story, I intend on returning to them in Yakuza 0's post-credits premium adventure mode in order to find out exactly how lucrative they can become. A more direct way of nabbing fistfuls of cash is by beating it out of the never-ending supply of street thugs who engage you in a scrap on sight. Kiryu and Majima each have 3 different fighting styles that can be switched between on the fly, and I relished in the ability to tailor my technique to suit each individual scenario. Yakuza 0's fighting system is wonderfully brutal, and the context-sensitive finishing moves offer an especially satisfying way to curb stomp a shoe-shaped exclamation point into an opponent's face at the end of each encounter. However, the all-in brawling never feels quite as fluid as the one-on-many fighting experiences of the Batman Arkham games. This makes Yakuza 0 seem a little behind the curve in that regard. Balancing out the intensity and brutality of the main storyline are Yakuza 0's side quests. There are around 100 of these mini-missions to hunt down across the 2 main city settings, and they're typically lighthearted if not utterly ridiculous. I particularly enjoyed teaching the members of a wannabe punk rock band how to talk tough ahead of a fan meet and greet, and chasing down a series of muggers who kept stealing the same new release video game from each other. Even though a number of these side missions are merely simple fetch quests, they're almost always worth your while purely because the locals are so hilarious to interact with. I was particularly fond of the local pervert Mr. Libido, who seemingly shows up every now and then purely to unleash a string of snicker-worthy sexual euphemisms. Overall, I enjoyed meeting with the eccentric supporting cast of Yakuza 0, and often went out of my way to seek them out because I knew I would typically be in for a surprise. Yakuza 0 is another sprawling entry in the open world series, packed with an extraordinary amount of things to do and centered around a genuinely compelling crime story. Since it's a prequel, it's also unburdened by the series' increasingly intricate backstory, and thus far more approachable for newcomers than the last few Yakuza games. While its melee combat may lag somewhat behind modern genre standards, Yakuza 0 still hits far more than it misses and is a big and bruising outing in the Japanese underworld. For all things Yakuza 0, stick with IGN.